Okay, that wasn't a very good beer crack because I already
That
had
was
my
awful.
beer open.
Welcome back to another episode of Stacking Dennys. I'm Jordan McAbee of RotoBaller. My co-host Nick Giffen of the Action Network. William Byron gets his 5th win of the season at Watkins Glen after Michael McDowell leads the first 16 or so laps. Has a penalty, has some mechanical issues. Overall, though, a very quick race and not one that fans enjoyed. Only 39.6% of fans on Jeff Gluck's poll said that it was a good race. Second lowest race of the 2023 season so far. Lowest was Martinsville. Nick, I know you did not get a chance to watch Martinsville. I did not get a chance to watch Watkins Glen, so it must be something with us that these races suck. When one of us can't watch them, the races suck. That seems to be the trend going on, as Larry Mack would say. But what did you think of this Watkins Glen race? Was it a typical road course race? Do you think this good race poll would have been higher if we got McDowell winning again or someone other than William Byron? What's your overall thoughts on this race from Watkins Glen?
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, it wasn't really that different from Indy as far as the race overall, right? I mean, it was a long green flag run. This time it just happened to be at the beginning of the race and then ended with a shorter run after a caution. So it was pretty much the same thing as Watkins Glen. I guess it was a little bit harder to pass here at Watkins Glen than it was at Indy. So I think my opinion is that people are just weary, tired, just weary and tired of just green flag running. We know fans want to see accidents. They want to see wrecks. They want to see insane battles, whatever, and that's not what has been provided the last two races. So I think there was some positive nostalgia from the Indy GP, road course race, Brickyard, whatever you want to call it. But they got tired of it after Watkins Glen. I will say the only thing I didn't enjoy was it being a sub 2 hour race. I love racing. I don't want my races to go under 2 hours. That's too short. I want to watch racing. I want to watch racing all day, every day. I love racing. So that wasn't enough for me. But as far as the racing itself, it was fine. It was really hard to pass, which is never fun. So there is an issue with this car on these track types. We've seen the same thing with the shorter flat tracks, seeing similar at road courses. It's not across the board with road courses. They can produce some good races. Coda was certainly wild. Sonoma was a good race. Indy was good enough. You could make some passes. Certainly at Watkins Glen, much harder to pass. So there's still work to be done on these cars at road courses. I don't know what the solution is, right? I'm not every fan knows the solution. They all know the solution because they always say more horsepower, lower downforce, whatever, and it's not that easy. You can't just go to more horsepower, and there's a lot to consider with costs and whether the OEMs, the engine manufacturers, will actually go for it or if that's going to drive them out. So it's certainly a balance, but right now it's not the best product. But hey, I enjoyed the race itself. I guess it certainly wasn't my favorite. It was fine. It wasn't like Martinsville bad or anything. But it's one of those things where I think the product could certainly be improved.
And one thing that I think NASCAR has going against it, as far as like you said, it's hard to pass at these road courses. We had back-to-back road courses. Like we don't have this on the schedule. So typically, if we have a bad racetrack or a track that doesn't put together a very good race, the next week is usually a better track with better racing. These are basically the same tracks back-to-back. Like the fast cars qualified up front, stayed up front. They were up front all day. I think William Byron had an average running position like 1.4, which is just ridiculous. Like that's all it is. So I think that's part of the issue and why people kind of got sick of the Glen. And like I said, like we had McDowell winning at Indy, which definitely bumped up the polls. William Byron gets his 5th win of the year. Nobody wants to see that, or casual fans don't want to see that unless you're a William Byron fan. So you mentioned the long green flag run, and one change that NASCAR made this year with road courses is taking away the stage yellows. Obviously, stage yellows get us the restarts that creates the excitement. So question is, and I don't even have an answer for this. Do they need to bring back the stage cautions at road courses? A, and if you say no, B, do we need to eliminate the stage cautions at all tracks? So a little 2-part question here.
I like it. I like not having the stage cautions. I know the stage cautions create strategy by do you pit, with 2 to go in the stage, and then do you stay out and take the stage, and then the caution flies, and then you pit and lose your track position. But there's always been strategy at road courses. There's always been strategy. So I don't think it really changes things much to have the yellow or not as far as strategy. Like, will there be different strategies? We saw, something like 17 cars out of 30-something at Indy pit after the stage and like the other part before the stage or something like that. I don't have the exact numbers in front of me, but I saw a tweet about it. So we saw a split strategy at Indy, and that doesn't even count the Hamlin-Keselowski strategy at Indy. And then there was a split strategy this past weekend at Watkins Glen as well. And there was that perfect caution timing this weekend at Watkins Glen, a natural caution which caught out Kyle Busch, which caught out Bubba Wallace, which caught out Kyle Larson, which caught out Austin Dillon, right? All guys other than Bubba Wallace, all guys I had some sort of bet on this past weekend, so that caution really screwed me. But that's the whole idea. That's road course racing. That's how it is across every road course series in the world. I shouldn't say road course. Every series in the world, major open or major closed circuit series in the world, they let natural cautions fall. They don't throw manufactured cautions, and I'm not calling stage cautions manufactured, but they are non-natural if you'll call them that. They aren't because of a danger on the track or on the circuit. So I like that. Even though it hurt my bets overall, I like it because that's what I like to see. That's part of the game. That's part of the deal. Whereas it breaks it up a lot more. You still have strategy, but at least you can plan around that a little bit more. Those kinds of cautions don't really come into play because you're either pitting with 2 to go in the stage or you're pitting at the stage caution by and large when we have guaranteed stage yellows. So I personally like it more without the stage yellows. So I would love to keep it like this. I love this kind of racing. I know people don't, but for me, I enjoy it. I don't enjoy the product right now with this specific car, but I enjoy the natural flow of the race without the stage cautions. As far as other tracks, I'm open to trying it. I think the places you most naturally try it first is something like a Pocono, or if you go to the Indy Oval again. Try it at those and see what happens, right? And then maybe try it at something like, what if you tried the Coca-Cola 600 or something like that? Because one of these ovals that's, I wouldn't say oddball, but like in the Coca-Cola 600, just every 100 laps having a stage caution's not needed. So just maybe try it at the 600 or something. I don't know. But I wouldn't necessarily say bring it back everywhere because remember, the reason NASCAR brought about stage cautions to begin with is twofold. A, to get the guaranteed commercial break, to get the advertisements. That is absolutely needed if we want to continue watching NASCAR on major channels. And B, before they did this, I remember listening to this, I would drive to and from work every day back before, because when stage cautions first started in 2016, I had been working at my biotech company from 2010 to 2016. I was driving to work back and forth every day, 30, 45-minute drive, depending on where I lived in North Carolina. And all it was on Sirius XM NASCAR radio was complaining about how boring the races are because these drivers don't try until the last 40, 50, 20 laps, depending on the race. They just ride around. There's no cautions. They ride around. Nobody passes each other. Do y'all want that back? I certainly don't. So I think the stages are good. So keep the stages. But at the ovals, I have no idea how it's going to go if you keep the stages, but don't throw a guaranteed caution. So I'm open to trying it, but we absolutely have to keep the stage point stuff because it's made racing better since that really couple bad years like 14, 15, 16 there. Or not 16 because that's when it started, but like 13, 14, 15.
Yeah, I think this year, we kind of see NASCAR do this where they dip their toes in with something like, taking away the stage cautions at road courses. And I think we're going to definitely see that as the years progress where they kind of take them away at other places where it may not be necessary. Like you said, like the Coca-Cola 600, Pocono, races like that. Even this weekend at Daytona, is it really necessary at Daytona? But getting back to Watkins Glen, obviously Hendrick Motorsports in victory lane with William Byron. But Joe Gibbs Racing overall, 4 of the top 6 finishers with Joe Gibbs Racing. And I'm irritated at myself that I didn't bring this up in last week's episode because I know we've talked about it before at Watkins Glen. Joe Gibbs Racing is always really good at the Watkins Glen, and I don't really know why. But if you remember back to like the days when Eric Jones was at Joe Gibbs Racing, he was not very good at road courses. Then all of a sudden we'd come to Watkins Glen and he'd be a top 10 contender at Watkins Glen. Denny Hamlin finished second, Christopher Bell third. Ty Gibbs gets another top 5 finish. That's his second of his career, finishing 5th. And then Truex rallies from a 19th place starting spot to finish 6th.
Definitely a big beneficiary of that caution. It's not like he wasn't bad, but he definitely benefited from that caution. And, oh, man, he and if Elliott hadn't run out of fuel, he and Elliott were on amazing strategies because they pitted right when the fuel window opened that very first time. And they were able to run some flying laps in clean air, clean track position, and they both made just absolutely tons of places on the track from that strategy. So, Truex wasn't super fast, but had a very solid race and ended up benefiting from strategy.
You mentioned Chase Elliott there. Also, Bubba Wallace. This will get us right into talking about the playoff bubble because that's the big thing now. Kevin Harvick, Brad Keselowski are locked into the playoffs now. There's one spot left. It's going to be Bubba Wallace on points. Maybe who's right behind him? Suarez, Allmendinger, Ty Gibbs. They're all kind of close. I guess Allmendinger's pretty far back, but Suarez and Ty Gibbs are within striking distance, kind of, or someone that wins at the Daytona race this Saturday night. Bubba Wallace, though, had a great race. For him at a road course, he's not a road course racer. Top 10 in both stages, finished 12th at the end of the race. But like you said, Chase Elliott was on great strategy. I don't even want to I'm already sick of hearing so much about Chase Elliott and how it's not Alan Gustafson's fault that he ran out of fuel. Yes, it fucking is. Chase Elliott finishes 32nd. He absolutely now has to win to get into the playoffs, as does Alex Bowman. So at least one of the Hendrick cars is not going to make the playoffs this year, which, a lot of people did not expect coming into the season. Obviously, these guys both missed some races. But, getting into this whole Chase Elliott thing, I can't believe the amount of people that do not realize Alan Gustafson isn't good. You and I have bitched about this for a while. He's not good. And, people are going to point to he has a championship. He's led drivers to 38 wins. He'd probably have 60 wins with those drivers if he was good. People are not taking away the major mistakes that this guy makes. And I don't care if it's not him that did the calculation on this fuel run. He still is the boss of that pit crew, of that whole crew. It is his fault. He gets the blame for this. I don't care what you say. It's not Chase Elliott's fault. It's not whoever did the math on this. It is Alan Gustafson's fault, 100%. And the amount of people that are just blindly defending him and acting like he's, I don't know, like an all-star crew chief is insane to me.
I think for me the issue is him passing off the blame himself. Oh, I was given bad information. Yeah. He wouldn't even say it doesn't matter if you were given bad information or not. You're responsible for that information. You were responsible for getting good or bad information. You were responsible for making sure every T's crossed and I's dotted or whatever it is. You P's and Q's are looped the correct ways. Like, you are responsible for that as the crew chief. You're responsible for everyone below you on that. So I don't care if you were given bad information. You should have made sure the information you were given wasn't bad in the first place. So whether it was your technical mistake or not, it's still your fault.
Yeah. And I just, sorry, Link's barking at something out there, but
I'll get RotoDoc to start barking at something.
I can't believe the people that just we've seen him make really stupid calls in the past, and maybe I'm hypersensitive to it because I pay attention to the stupid calls that he makes, but the guy's just not good.
No.
And here's my final argument for Alan Gustafson isn't good. When is the last time that Chase Elliott unloaded off the truck and had the dominant car? Like William Byron does.
He hasn't.
Kyle Larson does.
At all.
I would say
he's led the most laps in 0 races this year, and he's won 1 stage.
I would say he hasn't since he won the championship at Phoenix. That's the last time he had the dominant car off the truck. And it was the championship race, and we all know how the championship 4 all find 100 extra horsepower of speed in the final race.
Yeah.
So if he's so good, you would think that he'd have these cars
technically Atlanta last year, right? Like the Corey LaJoie Atlanta race last year, Chase Elliott absolutely dominated that race. But even then,
I don't count super speedways.
Okay, well, Martinsville last year, Martinsville won, where the worst Martinsville race of all time, even worse than this year's Martinsville race. He absolutely dominated, and guess who lost him that race? Alan Gustafson.
That was the cold night race.
Yeah, that was the time where he pitted for tires instead of keeping track position, and Byron did the opposite, and Byron ended up winning the race. But Chase Elliott won stage 1, won stage 2, would have led the most laps if not for that dumb crap there. So, that's probably the last time Chase Elliott really unloaded and dominated, other than not counting super speedways, other than since his championship win.
I'm just saying it does not happen on a anywhere near normal basis for an elite quote unquote crew chief.
Correct.
I would argue William Byron's crew chief is elite. Rudy Fugo, I think that's his name. Kyle Larson's crew chief, elite. Martin Truex Jr. crew chief. Crew chiefs, because Pern did the same thing. Elite. Chase Elliott, Gustafson is not elite, and you can't tell me
We've
different.
seen your favorite driver, Ross Chastain, dominate more races than Chase Elliott over the past year and a half, 2 years.
Mm-hmm. Did you see his tweet, by the way, after the race? Chastain's?
I did
Chastain's?
not. No, I didn't.
So he basically said he praised his team and his speed for his 18th place finish and how much gains they made. Basically admitting that they've sucked on speed for the last 2 months. I don't think enough people saw that tweet. But yeah, I mean, it goes back to everything we've been talking about.
To be fair, he also was one of those bit by the caution. He probably would have had maybe a top 15, which isn't saying much, but the 18th place was a little unflattering as far as the actual finish, because I had that Ross Chastain over Kevin Harvick bet and ended up really close when it really shouldn't have been close, simply because both Chastain and Harvick got screwed by the caution timing.
But yeah, we're 1 week away from locking in this playoff field. Like I said, it's probably going to be Bubba Wallace, maybe Ty Gibbs if Bubba wrecks out early, or whoever wins at Daytona on Saturday night if they don't already have a win. We made our guesses last week when it came to the playoffs and who we thought the 3 drivers would be getting in at after Daytona. I guessed Chase Elliott, Alex Bowman, Brad Keselowski. You guessed Eric Jones, Brad Keselowski, Kevin Harvick. So you still have 2 dogs in the fight. You still sticking with Eric Jones? Yeah.
I technically have all 3 in the fight.
You have all 3 in the fight, 2 locked in for sure.
Yeah.
So you sticking with Eric Jones as your because I know last week I said we were going to change these probably this week.
Yeah. The more I analyze this week, the more I think it's Bubba Wallace. Denny Hamlin's going to stick to Bubba Wallace's rear bumper, period. So unless Bubba Wallace is caught up in something, I think there's a very strong chance he wins this race. If not, Denny Hamlin wins this race. And even then, if neither of them win, there's still a very strong chance, somebody like a Keselowski or a Byron or a Christopher Bell or whoever, Ross Chastain, Ryan Blaney, Joey Logano win this race. So I will revise it to Bubba because I think, it makes too much sense right now.
I understand that, yeah. Like I said, he drove.
I don't want it to be. I don't want it to be.
Watkins Glen, but
I'm a Bubba Wallace fan, but I want it to be crazy, absolute mayhem, chaos, insanity, because that's fun, right? Like if this comes down to what happened last year, where Bubba Wallace has an early incident and he's just trying to point his way in and praying no new driver wins. Like last year's race was. Rain aside, last year's race was already insane before the rain. How intense everything was. Daniel Suarez leading. Justin Haley leading. I mean, just absolute pure intensity. That would be so awesome if that race is this race this year. So, not that I don't want Bubba Wallace to make the playoffs. I'm a fan. I do. But I also want just that absolute pure, crazy level of intensity. And I'm not sure we're going to get it as much with, we compared last week the Keselowski-Harvick potential situation to Blaney-Truex last year. We kind of have that this year, but it's like Bubba versus Ty Gibbs kind of deal, which isn't quite the same. And there's a much bigger gap there. So I still think it's going to be an amazing race, but I think all factors right now point to Bubba Wallace being that third car.
I 100% agree. I think Bubba gets in. And, what sucks is I think that how the playoffs are, or how everything going into this race with the playoffs and everything, I think we're going to get an extremely tame Daytona race. I think they're going to. I think they're going to go out and ride around like they did in the Daytona 500 for most of the race. I think that's what they're going to do. And I hope I'm wrong. I hope you're right 100%. But I don't see it happening. I don't see them being
Something
aggressive.
always happens in these races. Something always happens. I analyzed, even when, we have situations similar to this year, I think 2021 or 2020, those races were absolute chaos on the cutoff line. We had no more than half the field end up on the lead lap in any of these three so far Daytona cutoff races. I don't see any reason for it to be tame because we still have 16 cars that can win their way in, not counting Bubba Wallace, and not counting somebody like a Brad Keselowski who wants to get a win for some playoff points and just get a win, period, or a Denny Hamlin who could win and essentially help Bubba Wallace lock himself in, barring an absolute catastrophic scenario for Bubba. So there will be 20, and plus you've got interlopers, Brennan Pools, right? Like Josh Berry's. You got guys that just want to win to prove themselves. Riley Herbst, I don't care. Austin Hill, right? And some of these will be team situations, but like you can't tell me that for example, all focus right now on Front Row Motorsports is getting Todd Gilliland into the show and getting him a win, right. Or at Stewart Haas Racing, getting one of Preece, Almirola, or Briscoe in to the playoffs. So this is still going to be absolutely intense. It's going to be pure chaos that last stage.
I guess I should have clarified. I think it's going to be tame as shit for the first 95% of this race. And then it's going to get nuts.
I would say for the first two stages, yes. Each of the last 3 years, the first two stages were tame. But the third stage in all of them was mayhem.
So how can we use that information knowing that historically and most likely just general scenario that these first two stages are going to be tame? Does that give us any leans for stage winner bets, depending on how qualifying shakes out and everything else.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, we know some guys, they don't need to put themselves into a dangerous position.
We know
like,
someone like Hamlin will be up there leading, and if it starts getting dicey, he's ducking out and going to the back no matter what, if it's in the first two stages.
It depends, because Bubba Wallace needs stage points.
Yeah.
So the best thing Hamlin can do is protect Bubba Wallace. If Bubba's leading, Hamlin will be right on his bumper in second for the stage. Because Hamlin's sole goal is to get Bubba Wallace in the playoffs, whether it's through points or through him or Bubba winning. That is Hamlin's sole goal. So Bubba is going to be points racing, because if he comes out of this race with 28 points total, he's locked into the playoffs, because he's 32 ahead. You can only get 60 in a race. So if he gets 28 points in this race, he's locked in. So you can get 20 stage points, right? So that means he would only need 8, which means he could finish mid-20s and be totally fine. He could ride around the rest of the day.
Assuming there's no new winner.
Right, assuming there's no new winner. That's a good point. You're right. But yeah, that's fair. But even then, at least Hamlin knows in the first two stages, if there's no new winner, he can lock in Bubba with a mid-20s finish. So their goal should be to still collect 20 stage points, which means Denny Hamlin should be pushing Bubba to stage wins. But I get your point. There's other guys who could back out, right? Chase Elliott's not point racing his way in. He could just ride around until the last stage. Alex Bowman, same thing. I mean, literally every guy on this list that's outside looking in, other than maybe Ty Gibbs and really maybe Daniel Suarez, can ride around and just go for the stage win. Or not the stage win, the race win.
Part of me thinks, obviously that should be the strategy for Toyota, Denny Hamlin, Bubba Wallace. But part of me thinks Denny's ego is big enough that he would try to go win the stage over Bubba if in the position. If he's running second.
I don't think so. Did you hear his actions?
I think he would.
Detrimental interview?
No.
Yeah, he said his only goal is to get Bubba in the playoffs. Gibbs be damned. Not exactly those words, but that's his only goal this race.
That's another thing. Now these rumors are swirling that 2311 could be moving to Ford.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's going to be a split in the Toyota camp this race, for sure. Denny is going to try to get Bubba Wallace in, and you think Tyler Reddick would too, as Bubba's teammate. And Ty Gibbs is on the outside looking in, so you got to think Truex and Bell are more focused on getting Ty Gibbs in as Gibbs loyalists. So there could be a split in the Toyota camp this week. And that goes right in line with the 2311 rumors.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because, I could have swore that news broke like a few weeks ago that Denny Hamlin re-signed a contract and that he was back. But now that's the big thing, too, is apparently he still doesn't have a contract for next year at Joe Gibbs. And now, if they're talking to Ford and making that switch, obviously Gibbs is staying with Toyota. Legacy Motor Club is going to be coming over to Toyota next year. Yeah, that's another interesting dynamic I didn't even think of, is where does Truex and those guys go? You would think Ty Gibbs, but at the same time, Truex isn't a great teammate. He only cares about himself.
I was gonna say, Toyota typically at these races have been terrible at working together at the end of them. Absolutely terrible, especially in the last few years. So it doesn't bode well for Ty Gibbs. But I think it bodes really well for Bubba Wallace, because Denny Hamlin is 100% committed to being either on Bubba's bumper, pushing him, or making sure Bubba's right behind him, pushing him to the win, as long as he knows Bubba's safe in second place, right? So the whole goal is getting Bubba in. As long as you know a non-new winner will win and Bubba's in a good enough points position, that's good enough for Denny. But the way to guarantee that is either Bubba Wallace winning or Denny Hamlin winning with Bubba Wallace on his bumper. But I wouldn't say for the stage that makes the most sense because, you still want any possible points you can get. You don't know if this is going to come down to a 1-point difference with all the chaos at the end.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I understand that, and I understand what Hamlin said, but he still gets a playoff point for winning the stage, I feel like if I was in Denny Hamlin's position, I would value that more than I would
Yeah, but get the 5 race win points instead. Have Bubba right on your bumper, grab the 5 win points, get Bubba locked in, get yourself locked in, and 5 extra playoff points for the race win, plus a race win. That's the best way to do it, in my opinion, for Denny Hamlin.
Yeah. But yeah, that's something to the Ford thing is definitely something to keep an eye on because that would be a silly season thing. Mm-hmm. We talk about stuff coming out of left field. That would be obviously the rumors are swirling, and as of now, they're just rumors. I don't think anybody's broke anything, but something to consider. Looking at the rest of the standings, Truex, like we've been talking about, 39-point lead over Hamlin for the regular season championship. It's going to take it. Hamlin could do it. Hamlin's a really good super speedway racer. Truex isn't good at getting the finishes at these tracks.
Another reason for Hamlin to run for stage points.
Yeah. But if playoffs started right now, Byron's going to start with 36 points. And you have to wonder how much that team's kicking themselves for that penalty at Phoenix, that 60-point penalty, because if they didn't have that, Byron would be within 16 points of the regular season championship as well, which would just give him...
Denny Hamlin didn't have his 25-point penalty for putting Chastain in the wall, he'd be within whatever points of Truex, right? So a couple penalties here looming large. But it makes it actually... You bring this up, and I said another reason for Denny Hamlin to run for stage points. Makes it really interesting to bet like Bubba Wallace stage win or Hamlin stage win or Truex stage win because they all need stage points. Or Ty Gibbs stage win, right? Like, or Daniel Suarez. Like those 5 drivers would be the 5 that would race for stage points above anybody else.
Mm-hmm. But this has to, Byron getting his 5th win of the season. Like, I know 2-3 weeks ago we were talking Truex is the favorite to win this championship. It has to be Byron now, doesn't it? Like, that team has shown that they can win. They won at Phoenix. They won at Las Vegas. They won at Atlanta. They won at Watkins Glen. I forget where his other win was. These are all different track types. They are winning everywhere. I have no doubt in my mind that if William Byron makes it to Phoenix, he's winning the championship this year. Like, that team is so good. Mm-hmm. And he's so good. Like, this is his full breakout season. I know. We already crowned midseason championship. Ross Chastain is the midseason champion. By the way,
exactly.
He's 8th in points. He's 8th in points for all you Ross Chastain fanboys out there.
And he hasn't had a points penalty either.
About to be 10th. He could be in fucking 12th place in points by the end of this. He's only 1 point ahead of Blaney, 2 points ahead of Harvick, 7 points ahead of Kyle Busch, and 12 points ahead of Reddick, who's 12th in points. God, that would make me happy.
If you look at points per race run, I think Elliott's ahead of him too, obviously, because Elliott missed 7 races.
Chris Buescher has as many points as Ross Chastain.
Yeah.
Just throwing that one out there.
And Ryan Blaney's 1 point behind. Kevin Harvick is 2 points behind. Kyle Busch is 7 points behind or something like that. No, 12 points behind. Wait, no, I'm looking at the wrong line. Yeah, 7 points behind. And then Tyler Reddick is 12 points behind. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4 drivers lined up within 12 points of Ross Chastain. Right behind him. And like I said, Chase Elliott has more points per race than Ross Chastain.
Sorry, I'm tweeting out.
You're good.
Something right now.
Another thing is, what was I gonna say? I forget what I was gonna say. Shoot, I don't remember what I was gonna say. Oh, William Byron, you mentioned how if he makes it to Phoenix, like you're sure he's gonna win. So preseason, I took my 2 bets preseason to win the championship were William Byron and Martin Truex Jr. One of them was at 14-1. One of them was like 16-1. I forget which was which, but you get the idea. One was 14, one was 16. Look at them now. Probably the 2 best drivers in the Cup Series this year. And so just feeling very, very pat on the back good about those bets. So shout outs to Stevie TPFL as well, Stephen Young, Roto Grinders, who does the Running Hot podcast with me. We kind of came on those bets together, but feeling very good about those.
Yeah, that's solid. Speaking of, I talked about this last week, and I'm gonna make this sucker bet. Like, I'm going to. Chase Elliott 75-1 to win the championship.
I knew you were gonna say that. I 100% knew you were gonna say that, and I actually did the math on it already.
Okay. Don't even try to shoot me down. I'm making this bet. I don't care if it's a dumb bet. This is an entertainment.
I agree.
File
with you.
this.
I agree with you.
File this under entertainment bet.
We'll talk about entertainment bets when we get into Daytona this week. We'll talk about entertainment bets. But I agree with you. I don't. It's not the worst bet in the world. I think it's slightly. I've done the math. I think it's slightly minus EV, slightly, but you kind of just have to feel good about getting Chase Elliott 75-1 if he were to win this race, right?
Right.
So it's a contingent on if he. It's a parlay. You're parlaying Chase Elliott winning the race at whatever with Chase Elliott winning the championship at 5-1 or something like that. So if he makes the playoffs, should he really be 5-1 to win? No. Not based off the way he's run this year, especially after what we just talked about. He hasn't dominated a single race this year, but it's still like you feel like it's a good bet, and it is a good entertainment bet as well. All of a sudden, if he wins this race, you're like, man, I got Chase Elliott 75-1 to win the championship. I hear you. I totally hear you.
Yeah. But before we get into talking about Daytona, we need to whine about it. And got new wines. Got new shipment of wines in. You got the mimosa. I'm doing the punch tonight.
I opened the mimosa during the race, and so I got to finish it off because it's been chilling in my fridge. Nice.
This light's too bright.
Love it.
Yeah, so I'm drinking the passion punch, and you got the passion
orange mimosa.
These are brand new. I don't even think they're out in stores yet. Like I said, Nick and I just got brand new shipments of these wines. Do you want to go first, or would you like me to go first?
I'll let you go first this time. I went first last week. I feel like we've been trading lately, so I like that.
First, I'm gonna drink some of this wine and see what the passion punch is all about.
I didn't bring a mug or a glass down. I was a failure on that part, so I'm just gonna drink straight out of the bottle.
Okay, here we go. As always, check out Luvabella Wines, great sponsors of this podcast, and new flavors like
so
mimosa.
Good.
I'm excited to try mimosa.
This is so good, dude. This is so incredibly good. Ooh, double sip. Let's go.
It's good. Okay, this is 13% alcohol, by the way.
Nice.
It's pretty good. I wouldn't say it's my favorite. I wouldn't say it's out of this world, but it's good. It has a. You can definitely taste the punchiness to it. It kind of reminds me of like a, what was it? What Hawaiian punch kind of?
Oh yeah.
But
that guy.
Yeah, but yeah, no, isn't that the Kool-Aid Man? But I don't know.
Oh, that's Kool-Aid.
I could be
wrong. I don't know. I get all those things mixed up. You're right. That's the Kool-Aid Man.
Yeah, but kind of like if you would like just add some alcohol to Hawaiian punch, it kind of has that same zinginess to it. But my whine about it was gonna be Alan Gustafson and everybody defending him, which I kind of went off on a little tangent earlier, so I'm gonna switch this up a little bit. I am going to whine about the NASCAR.com website, and for that matter, and extending over to NASCARmedia.com. Obviously, probably only a handful of people that listen to this have access to the NASCAR Media site, which they overhauled last year and is just fucking awful. Half the time it doesn't work. used to be able to search for pictures by a driver's name. Now you can't. Just awful. But NASCAR.com. Can you just give us the fucking information that we want? Why does it take me 15 minutes to find the fucking practice leaderboard? Like, all I want to see are practice speeds. That's the only thing going on at that time. And I can't find it. I'm not a stupid person. And I can't fucking find it. I have to click 12 different pages, click through 12 different pages to find the damn practice leaderboard, to find the numbers that I want. Not to mention, you go to the website after the race and you just like want to see the results. You click on there and they give you a full write-up of the whole fucking race. Give me the results. That's what I'm looking for. Just give people what they're looking for. Holy shit. You wonder why if you search for practice speeds on Google after the actual practice session or qualifying session, that NASCAR.com isn't the first ones to pop up. You wonder why? Because it's so much easier to find on other websites. It's so much presented so much better on other websites. I understand NASCAR has this obsession with making everything look good, and I'm not going to sit here and say that the website doesn't look good. They have the standings with all the pictures and everything. Just give people the information that they're trying to get, especially for practice and qualifying, because you know who's looking for practice and qualifying? Guys like you and me. Guys like that play fantasy sports. Guys that want to bet. They don't need it to look pretty. We just want the damn data. So, NASCAR.com, please just fucking make things simple, because I'm sick of trying to navigate through your bullshit just to find some practice speeds.
It was bad this week. It was really bad.
Well, I don't even think they had them for Indy Road Course. Like, literally didn't even have the feed going.
Yeah, exactly. It was, not this week, the previous week. It was bad. It's just one of those things. It's unacceptable to be like, the premier or second premier racing series in the world, if we say F1 is, series in the world, and not have a functioning website, app, whatever it is, data feed, media feed, whatever it is. You got to make a better investment in that infrastructure. And I'm a huge NASCAR fan, as are you. And we applaud them when they do things right, and we, lay into them, whine about it when they do things wrong. So there needs to be I would say, an investment into some of the infrastructure there for the online stuff. So definitely agree with you there. It can be frustrating at times, but at the same time,
like
they at least provide more data than at least available to fans. That's easier to handle than some of the other series when it works.
Do you know, first off, part two of my whine about it, I don't like this wine as much as I thought I did. I'm actually not really a fan of this. The more I'm drinking it, I don't like it. It's all right.
It's a good thing the mimosa's awesome. I think you're gonna like the mimosa. I think you got one of those.
I would say I'm doing mimosa next week, but I would say this is below average. Not a huge fan. Two, do you know the Twitter account? I think it's like NASCAR Damas or something.
Yeah.
And that the interface, the feed that they have of speeds for practice and the race.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Perfect. Hire that guy for your website, NASCAR.
They should hire him, because I'm a little worried that he is going to get cease and desisted at some point, because technically, I believe, at least I know several years ago, it would have violated NASCAR's terms of service or whatever to repopulate their data. And I don't want to put him down or anything. I think it's an absolute fantastic thing he's doing. I just don't know, and I'm not going to, question, or I shouldn't say not question. I'm not going to, I just don't want to actually overblow it up, because I don't want him to have to take down his stuff. So, yeah, that's where I'm on that. It's they do a great service. I just worry that there may be some violations, because we've seen. I believe in the past we've seen something similar have to be stopped. So we'll see.
Yeah, God forbid NASCAR just makes the data easy to interpret and easy to display.
Right? But hire him. He's awesome. I think the accessibility they provide, NASCAR provides the data, is amazing overall, because even without other sites or other places, they have top 5, top 10, or not top 5, 5 lap average, 10 lap average, 15 lap average, 20 lap. Like, they don't have lap by lap data available on their website for practice. They do for in race. They have lap by lap data available. They have loop data. They have all sorts of stuff that the media can post and repost to their sites post-race and things like that. Green flag, speed, average running position, yada, 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 yada. And that's totally fair game, all that. So they do a great job of that, but at the same time, there certainly are some technical glitches, and I hope they invest further into improving that, because you know what it's going to do? It's going to improve NASCAR's fan base itself by people having easier ability and access to understand and watch all this data. And I hope they keep letting these sites go as well, because it's only a good thing for NASCAR.
Well, and as sports betting continues to get more popularity, NASCAR betting will also get more popularity. You need to make this data available. This is only going to help grow the sport. But
yes,
as we've seen time and time in the past with NASCAR, they probably don't give a shit, and they're not going to realize that this helps you by helping others 10, 15, 20 years down the road.
I think there's maybe been a leaf turned, and it's actually changing. I really do. I don't think they fully know, but I think I've seen improvements since I first started this almost a decade ago.
I hope
even
right.
Improvements in the last couple of years, 2, 3, 4, 5 years.
I hope you're right. I really do.
I mean, we didn't have 5, 10, 15, 20 lap averages 2 years ago. That started, I think, partway through last year.
Probably.
So,
at least the 5 and the 15, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I'm saying. Like, they only had 10 lap averages that they would post out to the media, and then the media would all retweet it and whatever.
Right.
But, so I think it's improving, but, there's still obviously improvements. And if your site's just not working at all for 5, 10, 15 lap averages, etc., or just any practice times, it's not good. Right there with you.
Mm-hmm. What's your whine about it?
So my whine about it is not going to be what everybody thinks it was going to be about, because I don't care to give certain people any attention. Instead, it's going to be the people that are praising Watkins Glen being under 2 hours. Why are you praising that? Why? Okay, you had 2 hours out of your day, and then you got to do more with your day, but you're a racing fan. You're a racing fan. Don't you want to watch racing? These are the same people that love watching 12-hour endurance races or 24-hour endurance races, and you're really happy this race was under 2 hours? That doesn't jive. Why do you love the 24 hours of Daytona or the 12 hours of Sebring or whatever, but you're very happy this NASCAR race was under 2 hours? That's not a positive sign for NASCAR if you're happy this race was under 2 hours, because you know what's going to happen? Then every race is going to become under 2 hours, and then they're going to go to an hour and a half, and it's not a good thing, in my opinion. I'm a racing fan. I want to watch racing. I want to watch more of it. I always want to watch more of it. Let's compare NASCAR to Formula One. Well, Formula One, and I love all the racing series. I have not been as much of a Formula One fan lately just because the product's terrible. But if the product's good, I do love Formula One. I love watching great racing. But Formula One races are under-ish 2 hours for the most part. Depends, obviously, on circumstances. But they have always been the premier racing series in the world. The engineering, it's more than just the racing. It is a spectacle. It's everything, right? So there's a reason Formula One is the biggest in the world. They don't need lengthier races. IndyCar is not as popular as NASCAR. IndyCar only has an hour and 45 minute, hour 50 minute, 2 hour races for the most part, other than a couple here and there. I wish IndyCar races are longer. I want longer IndyCar races. I understand there's a good reason for it not to being longer, but dude, I want to watch racing all day on Saturday and Sunday. I love racing. I'm a racing fan. I just want to watch more racing, and to celebrate this race being under 2 hours just blows my mind. Is that where we want NASCAR to go? Is under 2 hour races, other than a few here and there? No, I don't. If you do, I just don't understand it. I don't understand it. I understand why you think you understand it, but that doesn't jive with the racing fan as me. When the race is over, I don't want to sit there and not have something to watch. I want to have something to watch. I love racing. That's what I want. That's a short rant, but it's my rant. I love racing. I've told you, if the Coca-Cola 600 could be the Coca-Cola 1200, I'd love it. As long as they didn't run over the Indy 500 as well. But yeah.
All right.
Give me the Pocono 500-mile race again. I don't care.
My only rebuttal would be, how you get casual fans to watch?
Yeah, but
shorter races.
But these are the same people saying they love the 12 hours of Sebring and the 24 hours of Daytona. How are you trying to get more casual fans on those, right?
You're
contradicting yourself. If you want more people to watch the 24 hours of Daytona, then make it an hour and a half race. Don't make it a 24-hour endurance race. Make it an hour and a half race.
Yeah,
that'll get more people to watch 24 hours of Daytona.
And that was the main point in your whine about it that I cannot argue is those people. But from an overall grand scheme of things, getting people into the sport more, I think shorter races will help. As will, it was announced today or yesterday, Netflix will be doing a docu-series type of episodes.
Exactly. There's so many more ways to get people in the sport. Netflix docu-series of the playoffs produced by Dale Earnhardt Jr. Sports betting, fantasy sports, a gazillion other ways to get people in the sport than making the races under 2 hours. You can have a 2.5, a 3 hour race and still get new people into this sport. I've seen it myself. You've seen it yourself. Just because we get people interested in betting the race or playing Fantasy NASCAR for the race, DFS. And that gets them tuned into these 2.5, 3 hour races when they were never NASCAR fans ever for the first 30 years of their life, and suddenly they're watching NASCAR. It's one of those things where we don't need shorter races to get new fans in. We need better ways to connect with fans in general, and it doesn't have to be from shorter races.
Yeah, I'm glad to see them branching out and doing new things. And, I think under 2 hours is too short, but I'm not opposed to races being 2.5. I think that's a nice little sweet spot.
I'm not opposed to that. I don't want my races to be 2.5 hours, but hour and 50 whatever minutes it was.
Yeah, too short.
I don't want that. I want my IndyCar races to be 2.5 hours. I want my NASCAR races to be 3.5 hours. Minimum, because that's what I grew up with. Is not the IndyCar side, but NASCAR side. That's what I grew up with. I loved sitting there watching my race and just seeing how it unfolded. But I understand attention spans are shorter and shorter these days. I understand that, but that's how we can make things. We can make things entertaining for 3 hours, 3.5 hours. Stage cautions or whatever, stages. You can make things entertaining for 3 hours without shortening the amount of time we're entertained by it.
Mm-hmm. I get what you're saying for sure. And that's a, solid whine about it. People like to contradict
football
themselves.
Football games are 3 hours. Why are people not complaining that football games aren't 2 hours long?
Well, I mean, we're seeing it in baseball right now. You don't think we're going to see
but not
shortened NFL yet? I think they might do something to do it.
Nah,
try and shorten it.
I don't think so. If anything, all they've done is lengthen things, replays, more penalties, all sorts of stuff, complexities of rules. And I'm not complaining about it. I'm just saying, there really hasn't been a shortening of it. If the product is entertaining and there's other reasons for it to be entertaining, fantasy football, biggest thing in the world. Now football betting, one of the biggest things in the world. People will watch it, right? So if you find ways to make these things entertaining, people will sit through a 3.5 or 4 hour game. They just will. And if you find ways to make the races entertaining for 3 hours, they'll watch the races for 3 hours.
Or if you embrace betting and people have money on it, because you know why I'm up on a Monday night in the fourth quarter when it's 42-7, because I probably have the over at 53, and I need another fucking touchdown to hit my bet.
Exactly. Exactly, and that's to be fair, NASCAR does a good job of working with sportsbook partners compared to other racing series, but it can always be improved, right? You can always find ways to partner with sportsbooks to add more markets, and it's tough. Like, sportsbooks aren't going to add more markets if they're not going to get handle on them, and if they're just going to get absolutely destroyed by these props. But that's also why you need to be providing good data to these sportsbooks, just like going with your rant, your whine about it, providing the best quality data to these places, because that'll let sportsbooks set sharper lines where they're not getting absolutely slammed on niche, super niche markets or props or whatever, right? If you have something where the lap of the last caution, or how many laps to go, over like 5.5 laps to go, the last caution, or 7.5, or whatever it is, you get people tuned in until the end of the race, and then you have the stage bets, things like that. It has people entertained through the whole race. So it's part of that is straight up, just like you said, better data and better partnership for me. What I'm saying is better partnership with sportsbooks to sharpen their lines, which isn't great for us as bettors that like to do it to make money off of it, but there's a whole bunch of people out there, the vast majority of sports bettors, bet for entertainment rather than like profit. And you know, I think our audience is a little more. We like to try to be super profitable about it, but there's just a bunch of people that'll just throw money at random ass parlays on all sports and hope they hit something big. And you know, it's like playing the lotto. You know how many people play the lottery? A whole shitload of people play the lottery. They're not doing it to make money. I mean, they want to, but they know they're not going to make money unless they're incredibly, incredibly lucky. And most people will not be incredibly lucky and hit the lottery in their lifetime.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's entertainment.
Agreed. But
I want to be entertained for longer. And I want to be entertained for longer. That's my whine about it.
Yeah. As always, presented by RotoBaller Winery. Check them out, RotoBaller.com. Check out their wines. Find one you like. And I will always, as always, I'll put the link to get them shipped to you if you don't have them in stores around you. Passion Lines, Purple Rain, Reds. Look them up. But that's going to get us into Daytona talk. And you already got some bets out this week. You got some good bets out this week.
I've got a lot of bets already this week.
Love to hear that. What are you betting on this week? Because this is a betting podcast, and we like to talk about bets.
We were told it was a betting podcast. I can't wait for that person to come out of the woodwork in the comments. But no, it's. I'm super excited. This is the race last year where somebody, a listener of Stacking Dennys, won $1 million by taking your advice, by taking my advice, and by using their own brain, which is the key part of this. They took initiative on this. They earned it. They did it. They just listened to some facts you said, some facts I said, or some advice you said and some advice I said, and they put it together. I didn't put it together. You didn't put it together. They did. So they did a great job and won $1 million off of a $13.49 bet. They won just short of $1 million. But what was that?
It was a free bet.
Yeah, free bet even. So this race has potential for some insanity. just in general. So my goal this week is to find the most valuable insanity bets. I did make one shorter bet. We'll talk about that. But my goal this week has been to find insanity bets. I'm not sitting here expecting to win anything. I expect to lose my bets. Maybe all of them. I'd like to win a few of them. But I'm betting longer shots on everything, right? The shortest bet I've made so far, that's at least tracked in the Action app, is 9-1, right? So that's the shortest bet I've made so far, tracked in the Action app. And actually, it's the shortest bet I've made so far, period. But, yeah, I mean, the first bet I made was Brennan Poole, 2,000-1, to win the race. And people are like, what the hell? Because nobody knows who Brennan Poole is unless you're a hardcore fan of NASCAR. The sportsbooks don't even know who Brennan Poole is. They rated him same as, or in some cases worse than BJ McLeod. But
I know you DM'd me when you made that bet, and I was like, what? Why?
yeah, exactly. But Brennan Poole is good. He is really good. He gets more out of his equipment than anybody in the lower series, other than maybe like Kyle Weatherman, or right there with Kyle Weatherman. And then there's a few others. But there's, I mean, you know, you'll argue with me about not you specifically, but people will argue with me about this, that, or the other, but like most of them are in mid or upper tier equipment. Brennan Poole is typically in not necessarily shipbox equipment, but certainly low or mid tier equipment at best, and he's putting mid pack finishes up in places where skill actually comes into play. Road courses or super speedways or certain kinds of shorter, flatter tracks, these kinds of things where it's not just pure horsepower, those intermediate tracks and stuff. Brennan Poole is a talented driver, and he is racing not for Live Fast Motorsports or BJ McLeod's team, which is not the same equipment as Rick Ware Racing. Let's be clear. They are not. But Rick Ware Racing has had competitive races this year. Andy Lally just brought home, I think, a 23rd place finish, 24th place finish. We saw Todd Gilliland grab a 24th, I think, earlier this year. And then, obviously, on the super speedways, we've seen them grab a 7th place finish with JJ Yaley at Atlanta. An 11th and a 10th with Riley Herbst and JJ Yaley, I think it was, at the Daytona 500, right? Like, these aren't cars that are garbage. These are cars that can hang with the pack, and at this kind of race where I absolutely expect chaos, as we talked about in the third stage, they're just going to hang back until it happens in front of them. And with 10 to go, whatever, 20 to go, depending on how things are shaking out, they'll try to make their move. And if things play out the way they've played out the last 3 years in this exact race, there's only going to be 50% of the field at most on the lead lap at the end of this. So then you're looking at Brennan Poole, 2,001 to beat maybe 18 cars, probably less. If that happens, of course, there's no guarantee. And Brennan Poole has had amazing finishes in super speedway races relative to his equipment throughout his career. So just one of those where, I mean, Cody Ware had a shot to win this race last year if he wasn't Cody Ware. David Reagan had a shot to win this race in Rick Ware equipment last year if he didn't make a mistake. He was 5th coming to the white flag, and he thought the leader was going to do one thing or whatever, and they did the other thing, and it didn't work out. If anything, David Reagan and Cody Ware should have worked better together. But you get the point. Somebody in this car had a shot to win last year. That shouldn't be 2,001. So that was my very first bet I made, was a 2001 bet. And my model shows right around a little over 500 to 1 fair. My buddy Jim Sonis, he's actually like 625 to 1 fair. So we both are showing value, a lot of value at 2001. We're still showing value at 1,001. I don't know if there's any Brennan Pools at 1,001 out there still, but we're both showing value on Brennan Poole at 1,001 if you have that available to you.
Yeah, like you mentioned, we saw Herbst at Daytona. He came away with top 10 finish. JJ Yaley there at Atlanta. Like, are these guys going to win? Probably not. But if we get another mass wreck or giant big one that collects half the field, and then all of a sudden there's, what was there last year? 10 cars on the lead lap, going into the white flag. Who's to say that these guys that the better cars that are going to be up front don't get aggressive going for the win and take each other out, and then someone like a Brennan Poole just skirts on by. So
it's one of those things. So remember last year, Austin Cindric was leading, and Austin Dillon and Tyler Reddick were right behind him, and Cindric slipped up, and Dillon got underneath him and had his teammate Tyler Reddick pushing him to the win. It could have been very different if Cindric hadn't slipped up. It could have come to the white flag, and Austin Dillon and Austin Cindric could have been racing for the win and wrecked each other, taking out Tyler Reddick, and all of a sudden you got Landon Castle or Cody Ware winning the race, right? That could have played out last year. It didn't, but it could have. It very well could have. And I understand there was the rain deal last year and all that, which wiped out 80% of the field. But there was, 2020, I think it was? Only 15 cars ended up on the lead lap at the end of it, and there was a lot of them were damaged. So it's a race where just craziness happens. And it's so exciting to think this is a possible scenario, and I got him at 2001, and we're sitting here late in the race, and it still has potential, right? So part of it is an entertainment bet. I'm not expecting to win, and nobody's expecting to win 2001. But I actually think, and I not only think, I mean, my model shows, other models show it is a plus EV bet. And it could be a ridiculously awesome sweat for you if the right circumstances play out. There's no guarantee, of course. Brennan Poole could blow an engine on lap 1 in Rick Ware car.
Right. I would argue that every bet for Daytona and Talladega are entertainment bets.
I agree with that. I'm saying this is the ultimate entertainment bet.
Yeah, 100%.
Unless you have a top 10 parlay, which don't exist anymore.
Yeah.
But I would say this is the ultimate sweat. But remember earlier this year, I forget which race it was, when Ross Chastain wrecked Brennan Poole, and Brennan Poole said somebody needs to pop him in the mouth.
Yeah.
Brennan Poole was racing for 26th or something ridiculous at the time. I mean, he was passing cars in a Rick Ware racing car. He was competing. I think he was passing Austin Dillon or something for position when that happened. Austin Dillon won this race last year.
Yeah.
Just saying.
What other bets you got this week? I haven't made a single bet this week.
Well, I took some back marker top 10s, Ty Dillon, Brennan Poole, JJ Yaley, because that's just too long for these guys. I mean, this is going to be the craziest race of the year, potentially. It typically has been the craziest race of the year each of the last 3 years. I took Ty Dillon 150 to 1. I took Ty Dillon 150 to 1 top Chevy. I took a couple other top Chevys. I took Riley Herbst 40 to 1 top Ford, I should say, not top Chevy. And I took what's his name? Top Ford. Oh, Todd Gilliland top Ford 25 to 1. So that's where we're standing. And then the only other bet I have is James Dennis Allen Hamlin 16 to 1 to win, because of everything we've talked about with the correlation of him and Bubba. Oh, I lied. I wrote up one other bet. Denny and Bubba to finish 1-2 in any order.
Yeah,
at Caesars. You can grab either the Exacta or the Quinella. Those have moved so short I wouldn't take those now. But when I grabbed it, I grabbed the Quinella at 55 to 1. I moved it to 45 to 1. So the Quinella is 1-2 in any order. But then the Exactas are first and second, or first and second in the reverse order. And then those were each 100 to 1. So if you think about it, the Quinella and the Exacta are the same thing. Obviously, they're technically not, because one's more likely to finish first than the other. But essentially, if you take both Exactas, you're just taking the Quinella. So I took the Quinella 55 to 1. I moved it to 45 to 1. But the Exactas were still 100 to 1. So if you just did one unit on the Quinella at 55 to 1 and it won, you'd win 55 units. But then I moved it to 45, so you'd only win 45 units. Well, if you do the two exactas at 100 to 1 and do a half unit, you'd be still risking the same 1 unit, but then you'd win 50 units instead of 45 if one of them hit. So then it became profitable to take the 100 to 1 exactas. Those went down to 80, so then it became profitable. I should say profitable. I shouldn't say profitable because I don't know if they're profitable, but I'm saying compared to the other bet. Then it became more profitable and compared to the other bet to take the 45 to 1 Quinella again. But now I think they're both too short to play that because that was a correlation play. Denny and Bubba are going to be the two most correlated drivers, period, in this race. I fully, truly believe that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Explain your Ty Dillon. He's one of your favorites to bet at these super speedways. Kind of like, Todd Gilliland's always one of my favorite guys to play in DFS at super speedways. What's your Ty Dillon thinking here? Because, I think it's Ty Dillon, and that car's been garbage for a lot of the year. But I also feel like that car's improved quite a bit over the year, and we know how good Corey LaJoie is at super speedways as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely.
And the other Spire car.
Yeah, I mean, Ty Dillon is not a great driver. It's evidenced by how far behind he is Corey LaJoie in the standings. I do think there's some equipment deal there. Like, the 7 has always been better than 77, but it could also just be that Corey LaJoie is just typically better than all these other drivers as well. But that aside, he still just Ty Dillon has never compared to his teammates wherever he has been. Last year it was Legacy Motor Club, which was then Richard Petty Motorsports, whatever the hell it was called. Petty GMS last year. He couldn't sniff Eric Jones at most of the races. But it's a super speedway race. Everything is equal here. He is not in shitbox equipment, as evidenced by Corey LaJoie, right? He, at worst, is in equal equipment to the Rick Ware cars. And maybe he's not a better driver than Brennan Poole or J.J. Yaley, but he's good enough, and I think he's good at these types of tracks. We've seen it throughout his career where he pulls off top 10 finishes at these types of tracks, or near top 10 finishes. Daytona 500 last year, I had him something like 3.5, 4.5 to 1 to finish top 10. He finished 11th because Chase Elliott beat him by a foot, not even a foot, on the last lap for not only top 10 but top Chevy. So Ty Dillon just finds a way at these tracks, and it's the same thing. It's the same thing as these Rick Ware cars. They're gonna ride around in the back, let the shit hit the fan, and see if they can pull off a top 10 finish. And with Ty Dillon, you never know. Maybe he pulls off a win. I'm not gonna say he's going to win. I don't think he's gonna win, but because of the top 30 rule no longer being in effect this year, if he wins, he's in the playoffs because he's a full-time driver. And he started every race that he can. So if he wins, he's in the playoffs.
That'd be awesome if that happened.
Yeah. And here's the funny thing: if I'm Joey Logano, and Daniel Suarez and Ty Dillon are somehow in front of me on the last lap, I'm pushing Ty Dillon to the win because he's not going to be a threat in the playoffs.
Oh yeah.
He's not going to be a threat in the playoffs. I'm not taking the win myself because I'm more likely, if I'm running third, to wreck myself to get the win. I think I'm just going to push Ty Dillon to the victory and get Bubba Wallace out of there, and get Daniel Suarez out of there, get Ty Gibbs out of there. Let Ty Dillon be in the playoffs. It's not going to happen.
Yeah, there's definitely yeah.
One of those things.
Theoretically, it'd be awesome to see.
I'm the guy that thinks about these ridiculous scenarios. Like, if I'm Joey Logano, does the 5 playoff points help me better, but the risk of wrecking, or does pushing Ty Dillon to the win matter more to knock out a good car? I think the calculus is a lot easier if you get to knock out Brad Keselowski or Kevin Harvick, which we don't have now. But let's say AJ Allmendinger had won last week, and we could knock out one of Kevin Harvick or Brad Keselowski. Absolutely, I'm pushing Ty Dillon to the win to knock one of them out. But when it's like Bubba Wallace or Ty Gibbs or Daniel Suarez, maybe not as exciting. So maybe you still go for the win. But these are the scenarios I always think about.
Let's say you're on the outside lane pushing Ty Dillon, and you're thinking of that whole scenario. Let's say Chase Elliott is sitting there in the middle lane, leading the middle lane. Yeah, you're pushing Ty Dillon for that win.
Absolutely. 1,000,000%.
Yeah. Let's talk about, we talk about this a little bit each Super Speedway race, but DFS. Strategy with DFS. You love DFS when it comes to Daytona, when it comes to Talladega. What are some of the? Let's refresh some of the tips that are good to remember here, Super Speedway week. And
so I think there's the general tips.
Number one, do not fucking play the front row starters.
Don't.
Whatever you do,
just don't.
Do not play them. I don't care who it is. I don't care if it's
even
Danny
though
Hamlin.
you think this race could be tame for the first half of it, it's still not going to necessarily be tame with the front row starters as the ones leading the train.
Mm-hmm.
And then they would still have to win in the chaos of stage 3, right? Like, I mean, unless they absolutely dominate the first 2 stages, which we never see because of the way the pit strategies work out, right? These teams will come in manufacturers, and one manufacturer will end up leading and the other, and then it'll just blend back together and all that. There's just not going to be a dominant driver. It just doesn't happen anymore that way. So don't play the front row. Sparsely play drivers in the top 10. At most, and this is the 1% at most, 3 drivers starting in the top 10, because it does occasionally happen that 3 drivers starting in the top 10 end up alignment. But you want them further back in the top 10, 2 of them at least further back in the top 10, and maybe 1 inside the top 5. But ideally, 0 or 1 drivers starting in the top 10. Some 2, like I said, you can have some 2s, and absolutely no more than 3. Like the most tiniest sprinkle, if you're like mass multi-entering, of 3 drivers starting in the top 10. And apply that just going back through the starting order, because everything is so equal here at super speedways, and place differentials, especially on DraftKings, matter so much that you just want to weight yourself more towards drivers starting farther back. So DFS players do that. The good ones weigh it more towards starting towards the back. There's always going to be, in these monstrous tournaments, too many people playing drivers starting too far forward. But there's also an overweight of good drivers still being used in the back. So if somebody, let's say a Chase Elliott, qualifies 29th, he's going to grab 40% ownership when he should be 33% or 30% in the race like this, where it's going to be potentially mass chaos. So go underweight a little bit on Chase Elliott. Instead of playing him 40% where he's going to be owned and 33% is optimal, you can get a little leverage by playing him 28% or 30%. Or you could just play him what I call game theory optimal and just play him in the where he is projected optimal. Maybe it's 33% or whatever. But that's the basic tenet of super speedway racing. Fade the front. Don't completely. You got to sprinkle in these guys. You can have a driver from 9th place win the race and end up in the optimal lineup, or 7th place or whatever. So play them sparingly and weigh them as you go into the teens. The teens is often a good place to, especially the mid back half of the teens, find some good contrarian drivers. And then the 20s, 30s, those are where you're going to hit hard. Even the good drivers, you're going to hit hard. But the good drivers, you're going to want to just play around optimal, maybe slightly less than optimal if you want to have some risky leverage, is what I call it, to try to win the big prize. And the ones that are the, air quote, bad drivers, or in the bad cars, those are the ones you're going to want to go overweight on, because they never are played enough. Never. To this day, they have never been played enough. So that's DraftKings DFS strategy. But this race in particular is extra unique because it's going to be potentially extra chaotic, but also extra correlated with teammates. This isn't Daytona 500 where it's everybody for themselves when it comes down to it, right? This is Denny Hamlin is going to push Bubba Wallace to the win if it comes down to it. This is Joey Logano is going to push Austin Cindric to the win if it comes down to it. because that helps the company, the team that they race for. Joey Logano is not going to grab 5 extra playoff points if he can get Austin Cindric into the playoffs. We saw this last year. Tyler Reddick pushed Austin Dillon to the win. Even though he could have passed him, he pushed him to the win. So this is where the only race, and this is why I say use the Fantasy Labs optimizer. This is where you want to bump up correlation between certain drivers. Drivers that are not locked into the playoffs, that have teammates, you will want to increase the correlation percentage on the Fantasy Labs optimizer with those teammates. Because it is a smart thing to do.
Mm-hmm. And also bump up the randomness of lineups.
Exactly, yeah.
You know, when
bump
you set
up the randomness, all that stuff.
That's one thing, you know, I always tell people when it comes to Daytona Talladega, it's not who you pick this week. It's how you make how you build your lineup. I don't care who is in your lineup, but just be smart about where you're picking. And you know, you mentioned the teens being a very good place to find contrarian plays. Another one, and it doesn't make sense to me, are guys like, you know, that have a reputation of running bad, or they only have a few starts at this track. Believe it or not, this translates to ownership. Guys like Todd Gilliland, who has wrecked out of every single Daytona race, isn't going to be very high owned, even if he qualifies 30th. He's a great play qualifying 30th. Like, guys like that, guys like who's in the 36 this week, or Chandler Smith in the 13, Riley Herbst in the 36. Yep. Even Josh Berry in the 42, he's a little bit more about, like Austin Hill in the 62. Their ownerships are going to be a little bit lower just because there's not much data on them. So nobody has anything to go off of. So,
and they're in worse equipment, right? But the equipment is neutralized here.
Yeah.
But same thing, you're Brennan Pools. Like, Brennan Pools going to be under-owned in this race.
Oh, yeah. Because chances are...
I legitimately could, like, not feel bad about going, like, 40% on Brennan Poole. If he qualifies in the back. I legitimately would not feel bad about that. I think that's way too high. Something more like 20-25%. Let's say 15 to 25% makes the most sense, I would think, given he's going to be at most 12% owned, I would guess. I haven't run numbers on it. But, like, I legitimately, for myself, the way my risk tolerance is, would not feel bad about going 40% on Brennan Poole if he's starting 35th, 33rd, whatever.
Right. And I'm right there with you. I went 40-something% on Austin Dillon at Watkins Glen last week, by the way. Where was he? Do you know where he was running when he wrecked on the final lap?
18th, maybe? He and Larson struggled to get through the field, whereas Kyle Busch and Bubba Wallace made better progress because they were the four that like really got screwed by that caution timing. I think it was around 18th. About that. But Austin Dillon, man, I had Austin Dillon top 10 bet, as you know, last week. I was really high on him, and he was running legitimately 10th. Pushing Bubba Wallace for 9th in that race. And then the caution came out and just screwed a bunch of them over. But yeah, I hear you. Go ahead on Austin Dillon. But I think he was running around 18th when that happened with Kyle Larson.
Yeah. I don't remember what I was going to say about Austin Dillon, but...
DFS, 40%, something like that.
Oh, yeah. You were talking about Brennan Poole and going, 40%. Like, that's... I'm the same as you when it comes to risk tolerance. If I feel really good about something, I'm just gonna fucking send it.
Yeah. You're actually even more than me. Like, you will send it more than me.
Oh,
I stick closer to optimals. I stick closer to optimals just because there's a reason they are optimals. But I have no problem going overweight if I think somebody's gonna be too under, or vice versa, going way underweight to somebody that I think is gonna be too over. But I very rarely, if not ever, and obviously I don't play DFS much these days because it takes a lot for me to play, not being in a DFS state. But I very rarely, if ever, go 0 or 100 these days. I know my earlier DFS career when things weren't as optimized, just from a player pool standpoint, like people had no idea how to pick percentages of players. I was more willing to go all or nothing because I knew I had even better leverage. But these days, it's, there's still an edge in DFS, but it's not as big as it was in like 2015 through 17, 18 for sure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Any other, obviously some books don't have their lines up yet.
Keep refreshing FanDuel. They have lines up, but I want to, remember the Daytona 500 episode? Like, we live bet so many crazy things on air on Stacking Dennys. Don't see any of that right now, unfortunately. So,
no.
FanDuel hasn't released any ridiculous props.
Another thing to keep an eye on, I always keep an eye on when we come to these tracks, is head-to-heads. If I see a head-to-head and any driver is plus 140 or longer, I'm betting it no matter what. I don't care who it is. Because this is such a toss-up. Like you said, this race, everybody's equalized. So that's another, tip that I tend to give out for Daytona and Talladega. And rarely do we see that, but it's definitely possible.
Yeah, no, it's certainly possible. I'm looking at Caesars Sportsbook right now, and their head-to-heads are all, at most, somebody is even money. So, doesn't look like we're getting any of those right now, at least at Caesars Sportsbook. I don't have DraftKings open or anything. And then FanDuel has every single matchup in minus money on both sides.
Yep. Yeah, I think our days of getting great lines, like, there's obviously still going to be some value out there with these super speedways, but great stuff, outside of the Brennan pools at 5,000 or 2,001.
Remember last year we were getting JJ Yaley's types at 20 to 1. Now we're getting them at 12 to 1. We were getting, if I look at the $1 million parlay last year,
I think McLeod was 20. Reagan was 20.
Reagan was 20. Landon Castle was 15 to 1. Like, this year, Landon Castle will be 10 or 9 to 1. And then the other one was David Reagan 9.5. Yeah. So it was Cody Ware and BJ McLeod 20 to 1. We're looking at BJ McLeod was 12 to 1 at Caesars, and then he got bet down. Cody Ware is 20 to 1. Was 21 last year. Well, his counterpart this year is either JJ Yaley or Brennan Poole, however you want to look at it. They were either 12 or 10 to 1. And same with David Reagan, was 9.5 to 1 last year, so either 12 or 10. So a little bit of extra value there, but not really, because you're balancing it with the Cody Ware 20 to 1. Overall, Rick Ware shorter this year. And then Landon Castle is Ty Dillon. He was 15 to 1, Landon Castle last year. Ty Dillon opened 9 to 1 at Caesars. So they just straight up shrunk that. And then all those other guys last year that are like lower mid-tier, close to bottom tier, close to shitbox tier, whatever you want to call them, those guys are going 8, 9, 7, 6. There wasn't another one of those guys longer than, I think, 350 to 1. So
right.
Books have super sharpened up to it, and it's just going to get harder and harder to beat them on that. But there will still be values that pop up from time to time. So you just always got to keep an eye on things, because if you are a absolute knowledge brain of NASCAR, you will understand where those values pop up. But it's certainly few and farther between than it was last year.
And you have to be quick, because they're going to move quick.
Yep.
But who's your pick to win for Daytona? Got a feeling you're going.
Should
Bubba
I get the dartboard out? I'm gonna go to random.org, and I'm gonna just pick a number from 1 to 39, and I'm gonna go down the odds board on Caesars. Legit, that's just what I'm gonna do. Oh no.
Oh boy.
Oh no. Maybe I'll change it to 1 to. Wait. I got 37. Oh. Well, technically there's 4 drivers tied for 39, 38, 37, 36. I got 37, which on the order I'm looking at is JJ Yaley, but I just kind of want to say Brennan Poole because of that. Maybe I should pick like 1 to whatever Todd Gilliland and Harrison Burton, Riley Herbst, all those guys are. So remove the bottom 4. They're 9, 3, 7, 3. Let's do 1 to 35. Just going to random.org 1 through 35. 13. So 13th on the odds board is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. So it's 3 guys at 20 to 1. The one technically listed as 13th. Unlucky 13. Daniel Suarez.
That would be fun.
That's my pick to win is Daniel Suarez.
Man.
To win is Brennan Poole. Give me point. What was it? What did I do that one time? Like, give me 1/10 on this guy,
1/11
on the other.
Yeah.
Give me 1/100th on Brennan Poole and 99 100ths on Daniel Suarez.
God. Oh man. God. I'm gonna go with your prediction last week. And I'm gonna say Eric Jones.
I like that.
Wins Daytona on Saturday night and disrupts Bubba Wallace making it into the playoffs.
That one, okay, so we talk about teammates, we talk about correlations, we talk about all this stuff. That one's a weird one for me, right? Because Legacy Motor Club is a Chevy team, but Eric Jones is going to Toyota next year. But Josh Berry is going to Ford next year. I actually think that might be the least correlated team out there.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because are the Toyota drivers going to help him, or is he going to help Ty Gibbs, or to get in the good graces, or is he going to go for it himself and whatever? Is Josh Berry going to help the Fords, or I don't. Is he going to help the Chevys because he's a Chevy right now? It's the weirdest situation for me. So, and all of these things that I'm saying, they don't matter that much aside from like Denny and Bubba, or a couple other, like I said, Joey and Austin Cindric, or Ryan Blaney and Austin Cindric. Maybe again, another one that's kind of weird is Justin Haley and AJ Allmendinger. Like, Justin Haley's not returning that team, and he's never been a team player anyway. And then AJ Allmendinger, it sounds like, may not come back to Cup. And then there's Chandler Smith in that mix. So there's some weird stuff there. But like, a lot of this teammate stuff is kind of in the margins, other than I would say like Bubba and Denny. That's why I wrote up Bubba and Denny as my correlated play on actionnetwork.com, or in the Action app. I don't know if you saw the article, but I wrote up Bubba, Denny, parlay.
Yeah.
I mean, it's technically first and second, or second and first, whatever way you want to do it. It's technically a parlay. It's a correlated parlay. But there's a reason I didn't write up some of these others, because they're more in the margins. So while it may add or subtract a little bit of value here or there, I would mostly just say these are independent things. Like, for example, who is Kevin Harvick going to go with? Is he going to go with Eric Almirola or Ryan Preece or Chase Briscoe or whoever happens to be in front of him, right? So it doesn't matter as much for the Stewart-Haas guys, or the Hendrick guys even, necessarily. The one it matters for the most is Denny Hamlin and Bubba Wallace, period. And I think there's a couple that it matters for, kind of. Ryan Blaney, Austin Cindric, or Joey Logano, Austin Cindric, and a couple other examples, right? Like maybe Kyle Busch pushes Austin Dillon to the win. Those kinds of things. Like, there are certainly ones that matter, but I wouldn't get too wrapped up in Eric Jones' teammate stuff, not teammate stuff. And I brought it up, but like, those all influence things. It's super tiny compared to some of these other teammate correlations. So when I talk about teammate correlations for DFS, I'm just talking about the big ones. The ones that really matter for the playoff picture, where there's a very clear, solidified teammate picture. That's what I'm talking about. Michael McDowell, Todd Gilliland, I actually think is an important one. The best thing Michael McDowell could do for Front Row Motorsports is push Todd Gilliland to the win.
Yep, 100%.
Yeah, and they now have, and that's where Riley Herbst is kind of a weird one, right? He's running in a Front Row Motorsports car with Stewart-Haas Racing help. Like, what does Riley Herbst do? Again, so another one of those like in the margins that I don't really care about. But like a Michael McDowell, Todd Gilliland correlation is there if you want to use it in DFS. Obviously, it's not there in betting because we don't have any exactas on that specific combination, or quinellas on that combination. But in DFS, Michael McDowell, Todd Gillen, correlation is there.
Mm-hmm. Always good to keep that type of stuff in mind. But that's all I got for this week. You got anything else?
No. I mean, those correlations, I mean, we could run through one or two others. Like, Ross Chastain is going to push Daniel Suarez to win if he can.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's going to be enough correlation between Buescher and Keselowski because Keselowski doesn't have a win. I think Buescher would love to repay the favor to his owner. So I could see that being a correlation. The Hendrick cars are correlated. It's just weird to figure out how, right? Like, Larson and Byron are correlated with Bowman and Elliott, but Bowman and Elliott are technically anti-correlated because they want to beat each other.
Right.
They both want to win. So it's that kind of thing. And then that also kind of means that, like, Larson and Byron are anti-correlated. But they are both correlated with the other two, Elliott and Bowman. So it's a weird one there. But, like, that's kind of a well-defined thing. But everything else just seems kind of weird. You know, there isn't a whole lot of, like, well-defined stuff. And then you've got J.J. Haley, Brennan Poole, right? Like, if the opportunity arises, they should work together. Will they? I have no idea. The two Rick Ware cars didn't work together very well last year, but maybe these two are going to be better about it. I have no idea. But they're just correlated anyway in that they're just wreck avoidance, right? They're just going to ride around in the back. And a lot of these guys, Austin Hill, I think, will ride around the back. I won't necessarily say Harrison Burton. Austin Hill might not. But a few of these guys, like, you got to at least think B.J. McLeod, J.J. Haley, Brennan Poole, and Ty Dillon will just ride around the back. So those four are technically correlated as well for DFS purposes. So that's kind of just where I want to leave it off. Did I have anything else to say? Yeah, let's just think about the possible correlations out there for DFS purposes. I think those are the major ones.
Great info as always. Always nice to pick your brain when it comes to these super speedway races and DFS. And obviously, you know, we can't specifically talk about certain situations until the qualifying and starting lineup is set. Mm-hmm. But always keep the hypotheticals in mind. And at the end of the day, like, these are the races where it's the most fun to make lineups for DFS. It's the most fun to bet on long shots because you're just rooting for chaos. And
as long as you have a portfolio of lineups, you know, let's say 10, 15, 20 lineups or more, obviously for those like the mass multi-enter, you're probably, not guaranteed, but probably not dead until the checkered flag flies. Occasionally you can be, but by and large, you're probably not actually dead for a profit or even a massive day until the checkered flag flies at these types of races.
I'm pretty sure there's been a time or two where, you know, like half my lineup in a high dollar contest wrecked out early and I still cashed because, you know, half the field took themselves out at the end of the race.
I won, so I won the Clash or whatever it was called in consecutive years. I think it was 16 and 17. The preseason exhibition at Daytona, back when it was at Daytona. In the second of the 2 years, I think I was winning almost nothing. And Keselowski and Hamlin were battling for the lead on the last lap, wrecked each other, ended up collecting a couple other cars, and I took down the whole contest. Not only did I take down the whole contest, I had the top 5 lineups in the contest. Now, I only finished 5 of the top 7, but that's because somebody else tied with me on 2 different lineups. So, but I had the top 5 lineups in that contest. So I went from winning,
insane,
peanuts to winning $35,000, $40,000 with the top 5 lineups because I accounted for the chaos. Right, like too many people were on Brad Keselowski and Denny Hamlin who were starting far enough forward anyway, and who we also knew were going to be highly owned because of Brad Keselowski and Denny Hamlin back, especially then when those guys were just grabbing all the ownership at super speedways. So it's just one of those like, well, if they wreck out, I'm just going to clean up, and they did. They wrecked out on the last lap, it turns out, because they were fighting for the win. So you just got to play it. It's all game theory, man. Like, these things are, what is optimal? What are other people going to do? And how can you deviate from that in a profitable way?
Yep. It's fun. I love making lineups for Daytona. especially with the potential for this crazy race, even though I do think it's going to be.
I might play this week. Maybe I'll make the drive to California this week.
Getting talked into playing this week.
As if I'm already not dumping enough on 2,000 to 1 long shots.
Yeah, no shit. All right. That's going to wrap it up for us. We will be back next week to talk about the playoffs because the field will finally be set. That 16th driver will be solidified. And, yeah, we'll have a lot to talk about. We'll talk about Daytona and then, Darlington's first race. So, Good luck to everybody this weekend. Unfortunately, we're not going to see another $1 million parlay, but that was the 1-year anniversary of that happening with this race. So, good luck with your bets. Hopefully we see some long shot bets hit this weekend. And, we'll talk to you next week. See ya.